Hello, this is Brian Greer with TaxConnex, and I'm here today with one of my partners, Jeff Meigs. We're going to be talking about a topic today that is very confusing for a lot of people, and I know we both get a lot of questions on a daily basis. The topic is drop shipment transactions and how to exempt those for resale purposes. So Jeff, let's start with just a quick explanation as to what is a drop shipment transaction.
Yeah, so a drop shipment transaction involves three parties. There's a retailer, there's a customer, and there's a distributor. Historically, companies used to maintain their own inventories, and upon selling product, they would simply distribute themselves. But in this ever-growing sort of marketplace that's more expansive, we do see a lot more activity where retailers themselves no longer maintain an inventory. So they're making virtual sales over the internet, and then they're engaging another third-party distributor to actually ship the product directly to the customer.
So Jeff, let's take a look at this first example and walk us through it. Tell us what's confusing, maybe what's changed recently in terms of why we're seeing more and more companies struggle with this.
Yeah, so in this first example, we're going to look at a South Carolina retailer who has a website, and they're selling to customers all over the country. In this particular example, we have an Illinois-based customer, and we have a distributor that's based in Arkansas. So what's going to happen here is that the retailer is going to execute the sale, and then they're going to place an order with the distributor, who's then going to drop ship or ship directly to that customer in Illinois the products. The thing that makes this complicated is that the Arkansas retailer or distributor is actually considered a retailer in this capacity and must obtain some sort of exemption certificate from the seller in order to exempt the transaction. It's important to note that what's changed more recently as a result of the Wayfair decision is that distributors like this one based in Arkansas are now more prone to have nexus in a lot more states. And so in this particular example, this Arkansas distributor does have nexus for sales and use tax purposes in Illinois, is required to charge and collect tax when it's a taxable event, and therefore does need to obtain some type of an exemption certificate to substantiate that. So in this particular case, the state of Illinois will only accept a valid Illinois registered reseller for purposes of exempting this transaction. And in this particular case, our South Carolina retailer is not registered, doesn't have nexus in Illinois. So the struggle in this transaction is that South Carolina retailer is going to have to pay sales tax to the distributor, and then the customer themselves is going to get an invoice from the seller that doesn't include tax, which means they're likely to accrue additional tax on that purchase. Ultimately, our South Carolina retailer is going to eat that tax as a part of their margin, and that's really the hard part.
So depending on the state, in this example, Illinois, the retailer could be eating 6%, 8%, 10% or more of their margin.
That's right.
So Jeff, let's take a look at a second example. And in this case, same type of structure, same concept, different states though.
Yeah, so in this particular example, we're going to have a retailer who's, again, based in South Carolina, a distributor based in Arkansas, but instead of Illinois, our customer is actually going to be based in Utah. And so the same transaction is going to transpire. Our Arkansas distributor does have nexus for sales and use tax purposes in Utah. They will have a requirement to charge tax unless they receive some type of resale exemption certificate. Again, our South Carolina vendor or retailer is not registered for sales and use tax purposes in Utah, does not have an account number in Utah. However, unlike Illinois, which requires registration, the state of Utah will actually allow an out-of-state vendor that does not have nexus in the state to issue their home state resale certificate or use their home state registration number on a multi-jurisdictional resale certificate in this type of transaction, issuing that to the distributor and allowing the distributor to sell this transaction without imposition of sales tax.
So in summary, you have Illinois that requires a registration in order to issue a valid resale certificate. Utah does not require the registration for sales tax purposes. They give you a couple of different options, it sounds like. How many states are like Utah And how many states are like Illinois?
Yeah, the vast majority of the states, fortunately for most retailers, are like Utah. In essence, these states do afford some flexibility for companies that don't have Nexus who are executing transactions through third-party distributors. There are roughly 10 to 12 states that do require registration. So regardless of the nature of your transaction, whether or not it's a valid resale transaction, unless you're registered in those states, you won't be able to issue a resale certificate to your distributor. You're going to have to pay tax until you're registered.
Okay. Well, that's great information. And if you do have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you again for joining us today.